Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much once again joining me for tea time. Today we have a little bit of that lap song, Fireside, guys. Fireside, the best, absolutely the best. If you like something smoky, this is where to go, Fireside. I hope you're joining me with your cup of tea, maybe a cup of coffee this morning. This morning came early for me. I was up until extremely late, about 2 a.m., and now I'm back into the studio at about 7. The reason being is finally there is some photo news. I've been doing a lot of coverage on Starlink, on the tech industry, on all kinds of different things because photo has been just asleep. And if you don't want to cover lenses, which there is 6 lenses introduced a day, it seems, there's nothing to cover. There's not a lot of things going on. Well, finally, something has happened that we've all been waiting for. I know I have for the last 3.5 years or something. Ever since Canon decided to jump into the mirrorless full frame game, we're waiting for a replacement of a APS-C camera. For example, the 90D or maybe a 7D. Well, the R7 is now here. It is officially released. Well, before I get into it, I want to say that if you haven't downloaded any of my ebooks as of yet, go check them out. Go over to JCristina.com/books. Once again, JCristina.com/books. Go check them out. So we're going to go over some of the specs, the actual specs, not rumored specs, that are in this camera and try to decide, is this a replacement of the 7D, as they say it should be, or is it more of a 90D replacement? It's kind of interesting when we look at these specs. Where does it actually sit in the spectrum of mirrorless Canon cameras? Where does it sit? And which cameras are going to end up going the way of the dinosaur or the dodo bird because of this camera? So let's get into some of these specs. I know some people like the specs, some people don't, but now that we actually have the actual specs, we can speak about them and have a conversation a little bit about them. So to start out, the Canon EOS R7 does have a brand new sensor. It is a 32 megapixel or 32.5 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor. APS-C, guys, APS-C. Also, it has the Digix 10 or Digix X processor in it. Nothing new here. You would think it's a new camera. It would have Digix 11 or something, but it doesn't. It has the Digix 10 processor. Also, it has an ISO range from 100 to 25,600, expandable up to 51,200. That's something that I want to talk to you about before the end of this video because I think it's important. And I was kind of wanting more, but I'll get into that in just a second. Also, the Canon EOS R7 does inherit the EOS R3's autofocus system. It's technology, all right? It's tracking prowess, let's say. Now, bear in mind, this is not a BSI or a backside illuminated sensor. So it's going to be slower than the R3, even though it might have the same functionality. You're not going to get that snappiness of a camera that costs 3 times as much, rightfully so. Also, the hit rate, as far as I'm seeing, watching a few videos and also reading some, now that there is folks out there that have used this for a while that can actually report on it, the hit rate is not as good as an R3. Once again, I wouldn't expect it to be because this camera is not an R3. Once again, at nearly 3 times the cost. Now, as expected, this camera does have people tracking, eye tracking, animal tracking, vehicle tracking, UFO tracking. It's all in there, just like most cameras today. Nothing's missing here. Also, in HD or 1080p, it will shoot 120 frames per second. I would expect that also. I was hoping that they would push it up to 240, maybe with a little bit of a crop, but they didn't. 120 FPS is all you're going to get out of it. Now, when it comes to 4K, it will do 4K at 30p as well as 4K at 60p. And it is oversampled from 7K. The full sensor, which is nice. So it should be pretty damn crisp. I think the video out of this is going to be good. It also has 10-bit as well as we reported before on HDR PQ as well as C-Log 3. So this is really great because you can take footage, since it does have C-Log 3, and marry it to some of the other Canon cameras that also have C-Log 3, and it's very easy then to color grade in post-production on your timeline of your NLE favorite. Now, when it comes to shutter speed, this is one of the places where this camera stands out. I think a lot of sports shooters as well as wildlife shooters are going to absolutely love the camera because it will shoot 15 frames per second using its mechanical shutter, and all the way up to 30 frames per second using the electronic shutter. So from 15 to 30 frames per second, that is a lot. For me, I personally wouldn't use the electronic shutter because you are going to get a lot of that rolling shutter kind of nastiness, right? I am not a fan of that. For example, if you see a baseball player hit the ball or a golfer actually smack the ball and you see that that golf club is bent, that's rolling shutter, all right? And this thing has a bunch of it. So for me, I would stick with the 15 frames per second, but that's nothing to sneeze at. That's still a lot. And if you're going to be capturing stuff that's going to be moving extremely quickly, the e-shutter or the electronic shutter is just not where you want to be, period. If not, everything's going to look distorted and a mess. Now, as far as the EVF, this is a 2.36 million dot EVF OLED. Really good EVF. My understanding is this EVF is 120 frames per second or 120 hertz. I could be wrong here. If I'm wrong, in the comment area below, let me know. Also, the back panel. Canon always has the best back panels. Those touchscreens are awesome. It is 1.62 million dots on that back panel, and it is 3 inches. That is to be expected these days because I think they reuse these back panels because they're like on every one of their cameras, it seems. It all has almost the identical back panel, and they're always good. Now, the camera also has in-body image stabilization, as expected, 5-axis in-body image stabilization that will provide 7 stops of compensation. So that's awesome. And then you can marry that to an IS lens, which is an image stabilized lens, and now you even get up to, I think, like 10 stops or more of compensation. Also, it does have dual UHS 2 card slots in it, SD card slots. Thank God. They didn't do something stupid and put like a CF card and then an SD card or different speeds or some nonsense. They're both UHS 2 SD cards. So this does feel like a professional grade camera with those 2 SD cards. Now the cost for the camera is going to be $14.99, call it $1,500, which is a reasonable price. So you can order it wherever. I might put a link down below if I can find a place you can do a pre-order, maybe B&H or maybe on Amazon somewhere. If you want to use that link, you can help me out. If not, it's okay also. Now, the battery that they use in this camera is the same battery that they use in the EOS R6. So it is pretty robust. It's going to do what it needs to do for the specs that we see here. And that's what's very important. Some of the cameras, what they do is they put a ton of specs into the unit itself, and then they just don't give it enough power. Then you end up with these battery problems. I don't think you're going to have a problem with this battery at all. And for me, I would use a battery grip anyways. One of the gripes I see online when it comes to this camera, both the EOS R7 as well as the R10, which I'll talk about in the next video, the R7, the body itself is extremely small. The size of this camera is an issue to me because I just picked up an EOS R just to test out. I got a really good price on it. I told you guys about it about a week or two ago. It's awesome, absolutely awesome. But holding it is just difficult. My pinky actually wraps to nowhere, all right? I can't even hold on to the camera. It actually goes underneath the camera. I do have big hands, but still it is small. So even with this camera, it is definitely small and compact. For me, I would definitely end up buying a battery grip for this. Now, as far as the dust and moisture resistance, I'm hearing it's more like a 90D. It's pretty much sealed. I mean, it's not going to be the same weather sealing that you see on a R3, for example, but it's going to be pretty good. So I think that all in all, it looks like to be a very well spec'd out camera. Now, some of the photos that I've been seeing and video seem a little problematic when it comes to ISO. And I guess we can expect that because it is an APS-C sensor. And a lot of us have become spoiled with full frame censored cameras. When we hit about 3200 ISO on this camera, you can see how the image degrades very quickly. You start getting a lot of pixelization, a lot of noise. It just doesn't handle it. So I think anything below 3200, you're going to be pretty clean. You'll be able to clean up, let's say, in post-production. But as soon as you get to 3200, definitely by 6400, To me, it is unusable. I just don't like that type of image. Now remember, you're paying $1,500 for this camera, whereas I just picked up an EOS R for like $1,200. Okay. The difference is the shutter speed. And that's what I was saying before. If you need something that has just a very fast shutter, this is probably a good place to go. 15 frames per second is where you're going to be. You're not going to be up to 30 because the things that you're taking photos of are most likely moving pretty quick if you're sports, action, wildlife type of shooter. If things aren't moving, then of course you could bump up to 30 frames per second, not a problem. You're not going to introduce some of that rolling shutter into your image that makes your images look like crap. All in all, I think this is a very powerful, well-spec'd out camera, but my real question is, does this appear to be more of a 90D replacement or a 7D replacement? There's like nothing on the top of the camera. There's no screen. It feels very Rebel-esque. Okay, it feels like a Rebel. Now, I know the R10 is the Rebel replacement, but this as a 7D replacement, I feel like when the 7D and the 7D Mark II came out, it was a little bit more robust, I think. I don't know. It definitely specs higher than a 7D, don't get me wrong, but it still looks a little, I don't want to say cheapy, small, compact, kind of, I don't know. I want to know your thoughts on it. What do you think? What do you think about paying $1,500 for this in comparison to a full frame camera at close to the same price or even cheaper? Are you also now a full frame snob? Because I know when I looked at some of these images, I'm like, you know, with the full frame, we push these things to 12,800. Those things are clean. They look really, really good. 6,400, no problem. So seeing that 3,200 starts breaking away, I don't know. I do a lot of photography in extremely poor lighting. But once again, if you're a wildlife shooter or maybe doing sports action and you're shooting during the day all the time, this might be great. With that 1.6 crop, you'll take like a 500 millimeter and bump it all the way up to like 800 millimeter without using any kind of teleconverter or anything. So you get a lot of extra reach there, and you still end up with the same number of megapixels. So that's really quite good. Now, the one thing that I was blown away about with this announcement is that I was once again 100% wrong when it comes to the lenses. I said that I didn't believe that Canon would go down the road of creating a new set of lenses, just like they did with the DSLRs, where you had your APS-C DSLR lenses. EFS lenses were for the APS-C. They had STM lenses, and they did the same thing, guys, with this. So now we see an introduction of two kit lenses. The Canon RFS 18 to 45. This is a 4.5 to f6.3 IS or image stabilized lens, and it is STM. And that comes in at $299. The second lens is a Canon RFS 18 to 150 millimeter. That's an f3.5 to 5.6. Once again, IS, image stabilized, STM lens for $479. I think that it's very interesting that Canon went down this road of creating a whole nother line of lenses. And I'm going to talk about that in another video and how that could possibly play out when it comes to retaining the M series, the M50. So once again, what do you think about this camera? Is it something that is interesting to you? Are you looking to pick it up? What do you think about the specs? What do you think about the size of it? Is it something that you would want to buy now, or are you going to wait to see how it all plays out? This is a brand new sensor, brand new. And remember, it is not a BSI sensor. Once again, we are very spoiled, let's say, with full frame and backside illuminated sensors. And it's, I think, very hard to go back in technology, for me at least, very, very hard. Because some of the niceties that you get with BSI, for example, less rolling shutter, and full frame, of course, with higher ISO that you can achieve without getting noise, it's just difficult. What do you guys think? Anyways, if you enjoyed this video even a little bit, please throw it a thumbs up. That would be awesome. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and click this little bell icon over here so when I go live or when a new video comes out, you will be notified of it immediately. And finally, head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find all the photography tools that I've invented for you and me over the years, and hopefully there's something there that you might like. And if there is, please pick it up and support me and my family. That's it, guys. I'm out of here for yet another vlog. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you in the next one. Love you all.